market?
To be working for a distributor? I mean, relative to other jobs in Vermont, yeah.
A lot of work.
Yeah, it was a lot of work. You have to carry a lot of heavy boxes.
You have to go haggle over spots.
Well, you do, and I didn't even know that like your supermarket, you think your supermarket is just managed by your supermarket. The chips, the beer, the wine, all this stuff is managed by third-party people. We even place the orders for the supermarket, which is crazy, right? Like, you'd think they wouldn't allow that system. Because I'm billing them because I think they need more yellowtail.
Yeah.
You know?
That's hilarious. It's like you would do that for a liquor store. Would you place an order for the liquor store?
Exactly.
Really?
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's move towards getting started.
Do you have an order of odds, Mary?
Yeah. Just sort of loosey-goosey, and then if we can make it quick, then we can do a lot of Q&A at the end, which is probably the most effective place, right? So maybe first, I think most people know each other here. And I'm going to share this notes as I'm taking.
And they can hear us and stuff. Is that Alex?
Alex said he could hear us. I think everyone else can.
I can hear you.
Oh, good.
Good.
Hey, Sojun.
Yeah.
Hi, Alex.
Hey,
We've got Lee and
Alan.
Alex.
Yeah, I can see all of you, Jennifer and Emily. Yeah.
All right. So the sections that I had proposed were what to do now, what to do in July, which really doesn't mean July necessarily, but you know, what to do when you're ramping up for the actual exam, what to do when you're in the written exam, and then what to do and how to prepare for the oral exam, and then a Q&A section. So if nobody has any objection, then I'll just go through those processes, and I'm going to say out of basically what our three presenters, William, GJ, and Jennifer, present on their experience.
Eric.
Sorry, Eric.
I know William is my first name, and so it shows up on my email.
I think that's why it's so confusing, because I was like, I don't even know this William person. Now I know who this William person is. Okay. All right. So that's settled. Why don't you get us started with what to get started with doing right now?
Oh, Eric?
Eric.
Oh, okay. When we sat in this, we started thinking all these great ideas. Yeah, what to be doing? And for me, what turned out to be what to be doing right now was I couldn't consume things. I could just sort of start organizing. And so I tried to start collecting things. So we looked, I think, kind of collectively scrounged up old syllabi for previous iterations of the course that we had taken, and then started looking to see, where there was some.
Can you speak up a little bit?
From what we had read versus what.
Can you hear?
Yeah, can he speak up a little bit? I think his voice is too low.
Just, yeah, I'll try.
Does that have the microphone in it as well?
Yeah.
You could send over there.
I think that's good.
So things that we didn't read, and in particular, we were focusing on, when the professors changed. So we had, for instance, we did not have Ronquillo for the PM class. So we got his syllabus and then looked for all the things that he didn't have. And then it was just a gathering stage for me. So, and I think that paid off later, because when we get to the next section, that's when I used it.
Juniper?
Yeah, so I would agree, organization is important, whatever that means to you. Um, Obviously, the breadth of the literature nowadays is so tremendous, you're not going to be able to read it all, right? So what you have to do is find what you need in the moment matters. So whatever organization tool you like, start to do that. By all means, read the classics if you want to. I mean, I'm not going to hurt, but to try and cram actual knowledge, it's just not enough time. I would suggest if you have any money in your budget to buy what I call summary texts, like such as the Oxford Handbook of Public Management or Mary Guy's Public Administration Evolving, and the library has some of them, but they're old editions. The reason I think those books are useful is if you're asked a question and you are struggling with what the key sources of that question would be, those summary books will point you in that direction in their citations. So I always went to those books, read what they had to say, and then followed up with the actual citations. That way you know you've got the biggie in the field covered in your question. And I can provide a list of those if you think that's helpful, but you probably know. Okay, sure. I'll send it to Mary before he closes. Yeah. So organization and maybe purchasing.
So I think you two have covered almost everything that I wanted to say too. And I would add like some paper, like all the papers that you worked for the coursework, like these might be like some sources for for the prelim answers too. So like just, I mean I was surprised like particularly for the economy institution class I couldn't locate my papers. I mean I knew I some because we printed out and like the professor we had is different from you had but then he prepared like a printout. I mean, I'm sure I located somewhere, but then I always print out my my outcomes, and then I couldn't just locate those papers. So I realized just organizing everything that you have done and all the articles, and then if you especially use any like citation managers, then make sure you have all the accurate information, like just making sure like you have like the right titles and authors and years and whatever. That takes forever too. So like that's definitely something that you can start even like when you write the paper for this semester, like you make sure you whenever you add new articles make sure they accurate information. And I also wanted to mention like having a citation manager could be really helpful when it comes to like, so I use a Mendeley, and we have like have kind of like what is called Nuri like in the Word, Microsoft Word, like you plugin. So like you put like the name in Word, and if you set up like install everything like the Mendeley to Word file, then you put just the name and then you just insert the citation just like automatically. So like and I found it really like time saving when I was actually writing the prelim essays because I literally didn't have time like to look over like all the citations that I had whatever. But yeah, I found it really useful. So yeah, that's something you can do. Yeah.
Great. I'll just add two things. One, Mendeley or Zotero are both really good for making sure that you don't have to work at all doing your references, like Julia said. And when it comes to the Oxford handbooks, they're available online through the library for free.
Right.
Yeah. One chapter at a time you can download.
Right.
All right. So now, how about when we get closer to the event, and either mid-June or July, when you start doing?
Well, I did a lot of reading, so having collected those things, I found, and this was a function of what I did during all the research methods and quantitative classes, that I sort of strayed away into one narrow little area of focus, and I lost touch with a lot of the broader literature. And so this idea of who are the names that would pop up for different types of questions, I just wanted to get some of that back. So I read the classics of public administration. You know, that. And then I've reviewed a lot of abstracts and just kind of, whose names kept popping up. And it was just a process of refamiliarizing myself with ideas that I had known, but had sort of lost. So that when confronted with a question that wasn't going to have anything to do with any question that I had prepared in any way, I would still kind of have some ideas on where to go. And we formed sort of a group, a mutual assistance group, where the idea was that we would once a week craft some sort of response to a pre-existing question. And we actually, Lee, who I think I saw is in the group over there, was our sort of overseer. She would randomly pick a question and then she would give it to us. Maybe two, and we got to choose. I think that's what it was. And I never actually, I don't think I ever wrote an answer because the writing just seemed sort of tedious, but I would at least outline an answer and go through the sort of seeking literature process, and I found that to be really beneficial.
Yeah, and we should have started this out with, of course, everyone's style is going to vary. So please, don't take our word as the only way, obviously. I think if you've been able to do some reading leading into the summer, I wrote down, no think, just write, because you're not going to know how you respond until you try it. You think that you're going to be fine, or you think maybe that you're underprepared and then discover actually you're fine. So it could go either way, but the actual act of giving yourself a time limit, it's like training for a marathon. It is kind of a marathon in a way. And so forcing yourself to do that, or at least go through the outline process, was probably the most helpful thing that I did. And I actually even used some excerpts of writing that I had done in the summer in my responses. Yeah, and the group can help keep you motivated, right? So if you're a productive procrastinator, it's very easy to just say, oh, I'm going to read today. I'll write some other time or whatever. But if you have a group that says, we're going to do this writing and it's going to be due on such and such date, it can help motivate. So something to consider.
And also realistically, like when you're still like taking, PhD courses, it's hard to, find time to actually prepare only for the prelim. So I would say just managing citation, but then right after the semester, you can start organizing all the readings from old syllabi, and then especially you can organize by themes. I mean, organizing these readings by themes is always also part of you're preparing for the exam. Like you will see what are main themes in the field. And then I was gonna also introduce a free network mapping system, whatever. So it's called Kumu, and then I included in my handout.
Spell it, please.
Kumu.
Cool.
I found it useful when I was reading the articles and books, and then it's you can kind of organize the themes and connections, not just when making notes, because just writing the summary of the article, whatever, didn't really help me what it means to the field. So I have to I am a visual person, so I have to kind of map out my understanding, and that was actually really helpful for me to have the foundation of the field of public administration and policy, how they are actually interconnected when they people really before they became really separate from each other. And then I would say maybe you could start with reading articles that can tell you kind of the history of the the field. I mean, you can find it in our syllabi from our professors, but yeah, that would be good place to start with. And then I would say like balance time between reading and writing. Like Eric said, he did read a lot, and that's that's something that works for you. But then like me, like I couldn't just keep reading because I would get lost, and then like just I don't know what that it really means to the field. So I started like practicing writing. And then he said like he got just outlines, but for myself like to deal with the exam style and time constraints, I actually tried to finish writing. So in the beginning, I would give myself like 1 or 2 days or even 3 days, and then if I just cannot like figure out what to say or like I don't have enough knowledge, and I would just say just move on to a different question or come back to that topic later. Just trying to find a way to keep myself motivated in reading and writing. So like kind of figuring out like your own way to like balancing reading and writing. And also like while doing so, like you might want to be realistic about like how much time you can actually spare on reading and writing, because like like oh I have 24 hours today and I sleep and whatever, I can I feel like I can work, like I can read like 8 hours, I can read like this and this and this, and I mean like my initial plan like got really like fell out because I couldn't like like what I mean, like I was like I keep reading and reading, like maybe for the first day, like oh yeah, I'm so impassioned about like reading and whatever, and then organizing everything, and then next day I'm like I'm so tired, my brain doesn't work anymore and whatever. So like just be realistic, and like that's what I mean by like balancing reading and writing time and whatever, and just be realistic about like how much time you can spend, and then as time moves on, like in July, especially like when you feel like the exam week is really coming soon, and you have to deal with more anxiety and whatever. So just I would say like trying to find the find a way to relax and meditate yourself and just to keep yourself motivated. That's like that was really easy to move on my preparation. So I say organization, I interest Kumu, balance time, and time practice. I talked about it, and being realistic about your time. And then I also included some studying material examples that I found useful. So like in my spare time, for example, like like Paul Kearney has like his own blog. I guess you guys have heard of it. He has a podcast, right? Is it podcast? So yeah. So in my spare time, I just listen to his podcast, or like before I go to bed, like it was a great way for me to fall asleep. But anyways, so like I just kept listening like policy.
So as soon as you get to policy process stuff during the exam,
But it was like it was both like the purpose is like sleeping and studying. I mean, yeah. But anyways, like just like when you don't want to like like study really hard, just like just turn on his podcast, and he's gonna tell you like something about like rational choice and whatever.
he's got that cool accent too.
Yeah, that accent. So yeah. So I got the.
Did you answer about the having mixed literature, mixed field
No, I was
literature?
gonna throw that question out to all of us too. But I included one question that I came up.
All right.
But I don't know. Maybe I was wondering if you guys think it's good to have like mixed literature in one subject, or like only focusing on. I mean, I kind of got. Well, I don't know. Anyways, like I got kind of confused, like because like after like reading a lot of articles and whatever, like PA and policy, whatever, they were so connected, and like I feel like and then like I have kind of like hard time to draw the line among the fields, and then not sure if professors have preferences or if you guys have any questions on that.
Well, I was going to say that the comprehensive exam here has kind of changed over time, even just since I've been here. So when we very first started, the focus of the exam was you were to understand the chronology of the development of the field. And the focus was on knowing every demarcation over time, right? And that would serve you if you were taking an actual exam, I think, like a multiple choice exam, which other universities have for similar PhD programs. We don't have that. We have 4 questions, right? And those 4 questions are going to touch on relatively small themes compared to that kind of comprehensive overview. So I think that you prepared for the old style of thinking. The new style is, and I mean, don't get me wrong, having that broad understanding, super key, right? But it's not going to be tested. It's not what you're being tested on. It just isn't. I don't think.
Right, it needs to be, like, your understanding has to be broad enough to situate your specific answer to the specific question in something that is reasonable in terms of who you're writing for.
Right, I mean, they're asking you to make an argument, right?
Right.
And you've got 7 pages to make an argument. I'll bet you in there, you're going to nod at the origins of your subject. You're going to go 2 sentences with some, and the rest of it is going to be supporting your argument, right? So that's very different than writing 7 pages on the development of rational choice theory.
Right, but at the same time, I think, like, I don't know, maybe we can wait till the orals and I'll say something that has something to do with that.
Okay.
We talk about that.
So that's a question maybe you could also ask, the PhD committee, like even for like a formal,
The formal prep session.
yeah.
Whenever they decide who's on the actual exam
Right,
committee.
right.
Oh, okay, so that's up in the air.
Mhm.
Yeah.
All right, so surviving the written exams.
Well, first, if we could just briefly, someone go through and actually explain what the written exam looks like, the structure and all that. And I think since you're on the PhD committee, Jihei, you're probably in the best position to tell us about that.
But I wasn't in the PhD committee last year, but
You're not on it this year?
this year, yes, I am, but not in the last year. It doesn't
Or if they're not changing it, then you know what it was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So just a brief introduction of the exam. Where there are like 4 subjects: PA, policy, public management, and research design. But that's not research, but well, PA, policy, PM, and economic institution theories, whatever. And then out of these 4 subjects, one is gonna be a research design focused question. But it's been always with economic institution subject.
Not always.
Not always.
Well, it's been most of the time. But we found only 1 year, policy had a research design question. Only 1 year out of
And I would guess that's what you guys are going to confront also, because I can't imagine, did Paul teach your economic foundation institutions? But I can't imagine he's going to be on the committee. So probably that's the one that they're going to align with the research methods.
right.
Which is weaker than it used to be. When you had to write 10 to 12 pages, you actually had to develop a research design. Now, again, I use the term, you're just gonna have to nod at it, basically. It's not like a super detailed, thing like it used to be. You had to develop variables and off-road.
It's 7 pages.
Mm-hmm.
How long do you have to write it?
Get the question at 6 in the morning in an email, and it's due by midnight.
That's 18.
And you still had 1 day off? Did you have
And
Wednesday off?
so Monday and Tuesday we got questions, and it was PA and PM back to back, and then we had Wednesday off, and then we had Thursday and Friday questions, and the research design question was the last. Right, and it was the policy process question that came on Thursday. And
You emailed your responses to Dawn?
to Dawn.
Yeah, so
And
they,
do you have a number? Did you pick a number yet?
We haven't even signed up yet.
Okay,
yeah,
so-
when you do that, they'll assign you a number so that your name's not attached to it. They toyed with the Canvas submission system, and I think decided not
Yeah.
to it. So just make sure that Dawn gets it. And she's really nice. She knows you're freaking out, so you can ask her to confirm that you received it. You know, she'll do things like that.
There is a kind of like document work that you have. I mean, I had to fill out the form of like Prelim exam whatever. So I mean, Dawn probably sends you guys an email, but yeah.
Right, you'll
there's
get a thing
something
that
you
says
have to-
sign up, and one of the
Yeah.
pieces of
Yeah.
signing up is picking your number.
Yeah.
Just write a number that you put on all of your papers so that it's anonymous.
Okay,
In theory.
so with the format out of the way, why don't we focus on the Juniper,
On
on,
the surviving written.
yeah, surviving the written exam.
I have a
Well,
question
yeah,
on that. So that would be, is that 7 pages, double spaced? Does that include notes?
no.
References
Right,
are,
it's 7 pages, double spaced, not including reference.
Not included.
Who sent the question?
they were asking if it's 7 pages double spaced, not including
Oh,
references.
he's sending
I had that. Who emails the
whoever
Chris.
shared.
Chris?
Yeah,
Yeah,
through either Antoinette or Dawn.
And then you submit it to Dawn.
right. It'll be clear, Alex, when it happens. We just don't know when the dates are yet. So surviving the written exams, again, this is kind of a personal choices. You know how you work best. One thing that I did was I thought about my meals ahead of time. I pre-heated the food and froze it so that I could just not have to worry about it, because that was really helpful. You don't want to end up in a situation where you're not feeding yourself because you're busy writing or whatever. Try to rest on Wednesday. I didn't do anything. I don't even remember, honestly. It's like the whole, I'm pretty sure I did nothing. I certainly did not study.
Remember one.
No idea.
Yeah, it went by
Just
really
gone.
fast, just gone. So rest on Wednesday. Obviously try to sleep, but that's kind of empty advice, given you may or may not be able to. Sam Larson, who is a graduate of our program that some of you know, she liked to read the question first, and then she would go for a walk and get her thoughts together. And I think she kind of generated her core argument on that walk. Free of all the literature, she would just take her own take on a question and then come back ready to support it. I tried that. That worked for me once, didn't work for me other times, but it does get your blood moving. If you really are waking up at, say, 5:30 and getting a question at 6, which I didn't do. I slept until 8, actually, every morning. There's no way I was going to change
I had to pick up my kids at 6. So
Yeah,
I was there at 5. Because
Right.
they emailed it to us at like midnight.
Yeah, they did. Ours was a different deal.
Oh, really? Yeah, at midnight.
So in my opinion, and this is really just my guess, having a cohesive argument is the most important thing, even if all your supporting documentation is not right. Some people I have heard, and I experienced this, started out with an argument and then abandoned it halfway through because they didn't like it, and then tried to start over again. That's really hard to do in 7 hours. So I would say, even if your argument has got some holes in it, try to just keep supporting it and attempt to show that you understand the material in that process, even if they might poke holes in it ultimately in their orals. They're really looking to see that you can take a position and support it, in my opinion. And other than that, it's exhausting, and I think the most important thing to do, I felt that I had totally borked one of the questions. I thought I was going to totally fail it, and I spent a lot of mental energy thinking that I had failed it. In retrospect, I should have just, kept on writing, turned it in, and not worried about it. So if you can find ways not to stress too much about your performance, that's good. And lots of other things. What about you guys?
I mean, you will figure out the place that you want to take the exam. So that's something like you just start, like when you start studying, you will find a secure place to study, and then eventually that's the place you're gonna take the exam. So finding a secure place was important too. And I just say, want to emphasize again, like finishing the essay is most important, rather than like judging your arguments. Like don't think about your how good your argument is gonna be, because the PhD community may have different ideas, and there are two people who grade one subject, so these two people have different ideas and different grades, whatever. So just wrap up and just send it to Dawn. That's most important. That's it, yeah. And then you can say anything, like you can defend whatever, like it's an oral defense or whatever, like your argument, just finish it.
I guess I sort of a lot of the same things. I did some food prep conceptually and shopping wise. I didn't like pre-make anything, but I knew what I was going to eat and when I was going to eat it, so I wouldn't even have to think about it and do it. I got up at 6:30, read the question, and then I did the Sam Larson approach. I went for a run. So I had just a little 3.5 mile loop, and by the time I got done, like I would read the question, go, I have no idea what I'm going to talk about. And by the time I got back, I knew what I wanted to talk about. So I would eat breakfast, and then I would kind of sketch out my argument that I was going to take, and think about what I was going to have to find in terms of literature to support what I was saying. And then I would head in and just start looking for resources and compiling those, and then write. And I think I agree that you have to, once you decide what to write, write it. Don't second guess it. Don't change forces in midstream. Just write it. And then I could never, like, we have until midnight, but I would get to GA's mental exhaustion point, at which point I knew all I was going to do is make it worse. And so I would finish it, and then I would go and do something else for an hour or something, too, and then just come back and read it and make sure I hadn't said anything just horrendously stupid. And then I would email it to Dawn so that it was done, the deed was complete. And then I would quick sort of write out some thoughts that were still in my head about things that maybe I had screwed up or that I wish I had done, so that then I could put it to bed. Like I wasn't going to keep ruminating on stuff. So on Tuesday, I did not think about my Monday question ever again at all. And just knowing that you have time afterward, and you have time after you get feedback, you have to do that. We didn't talk about this, but you have to do a reflection, like a 2-page reflection on the process, where you write up and send in, oh, this is what I wish I'd done, haven't had some time to think about it, maybe this is another way I could have approached it. And so the notes that I kind of wrote for myself were the framework for that. But you just know that you are going to have a chance to come back to it. Then you get feedback from the committee 48 hours before you go in for your orals. And then you get some time to deal with what they have to say. So it really is a thing where you can't just kind of put it aside and be done with it. And that's probably best, because you should be writing the next question, not continuing to mentally rewrite the first.
So yeah, like here I want to emphasize again the time practice. I practice like we could submit like by midnight, but then I try to finish like around 9 or 10 p.m. at most. That way, I gave myself at least 2 hours before I go to bed. Like just forget about the exam and just like focus on myself and just thinking of the positive side of words, and that way I could actually sleep. Otherwise I'll be like, oh my god, I'm so worried about it. Like, what did I say? Like, what did I, just just forget about everything. Just put them, behind you, and they just only like think of good things, and that kind of mind control was really important for my good night's sleep, so that I can continue for the rest of the exam, whatever.
Yeah, I forgot to mention, and thank you for bringing up that whole reflection process, because I think we should talk more about that. It's a little tricky. What you write, what you critique yourself on, you're handing, right? So be prepared for them to ask you about what you've already said you haven't done well, which we'll get to in the oral exams. But I wanted to mention, as you're studying for the comps, from now all the way until you take them, write down ideas as you study that are just interesting to you, even if it's not your dissertation. wow, this would be a cool idea. Like I have a running list of like 250 ideas that were generated during that study process. And if you might land on your dissertation topic loosely in this process. So it's really quite a useful time for that. And of course, you're going to have to respond to that in your orals, which we're coming to now, I think, right?
Yeah. I did want to say about the oral before I let you guys take over, is that I think none of us knew what to make of our grades when they gave us those silly numbers that mean nothing. And
are contradictory.
I'm gonna remember that when I get the silly numbers that mean nothing. I'm gonna be like, Mary said these don't mean anything.
unless it says fail, it's a good grade. All right, unless it says fail, it's good. So don't worry if you get a bunch of excellent pass, and then you get a lot of conditional passes. Unless it says outright fail, it's a good grade. So don't worry about it. And some people who got fails also passed. And that's all it's a pass-fail exam. So don't get freaked out by those numbers. Just pay attention to the comments, not the numbers. Don't just write them out.
That's right, yeah. Like really grades don't matter. The grades for the written exam don't really matter because you can like defend whatever. And like the oral exam, the committee members are actually much nicer than you. Yeah. So at least you can say anything, and then you can just tell them why you did, and then you tell them you could have done differently, whatever. Then they'll be okay. And then like last year, like Eric told me, I remember, like if you don't do well at the written exams, that's a great opportunity for the committee to ask good questions. So leave some space for the committee members to ask good questions. So it's completely okay to not to do really well. Like and that's
or if you write an airtight response, then you have no idea what they're
going to
do.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's true.
So this
It
is
could go
positive.
anywhere.
Yeah. So that was a really positive, like great advice.
And I don't know if you guys have gotten these, but we got previous responses.
We have some from not your guys' year, but I have them from before.
And they have the ones we got have the grades and the comments on them. So if you want to reinforce what Nuri was saying, look at some of those, because you'll get one paper that gets a 4 from somebody and then gets a 1 from somebody else, or a 3 and a fail. And you go, it's the same paper.
Mary Guy gave me the worst grade of anyone, and like I work with her all the time, and so it's like they don't mean it.
Well, they don't know who they're grading.
Well, yeah, they do. They know who.
That's all right, and especially like considering like.
Which is why she,
international.
grade me well,
Yeah.
Chris would grade me, right?
That's right. Yeah. It's enough.
So for preparing for the orals, there's almost no way to prepare. However, if you wanted to, you could ask a professor who's not on the panel, not on the committee, to run a mock session for you if you wanted to, where he or she grills you on some questions and you practice responding. It's almost useless in the sense that it's not going to be on the actual things that you've written. But if you think that will help you feel prepared, we did that. It was fun. Ronquillo grilled us, and we got to take our hand at it.
I think it got Jennifer through that.
Yeah. Okay.
For some people, it really, really helps.
So,
If you're nervous and speaking in front of
Yeah.
people, it's really important.
Yeah. And GA already said, obviously they want you to succeed. They really do. So go into that orals, knowing that they want you to succeed, which means if you get a question and you're struggling to answer it, just take a moment to come up with something. Like, they will accept almost anything, but you have to come up with something. That's right. You can't just freeze up completely, right? So, I think, and then they're going to use your responses. Really, or they did. I don't know about you guys.
Yeah, it was weird because I spent time getting ready for the orals by coming up with responses to my own self-criticism. So when I said, well, I did this wrong, then, I should have done this, and I put some time into thinking about that so I could really go in and give a much better answer to the thing I'd done poorly. And responding to feedback. But the feedback that I got was sort of inconsistent. I got very little from Guy and Ronquillo. I got contradictory stuff from Weibel and Heikela, where like there was one thing on my research design, Chris hated it. And Tanya said, this is really great. And so how do you prepare for that other than, I guess, to think about how you could support Tanya's approach? And I knew going in that my theories of the policy process answer was the weakest of all of them. And part of it was because I had this sort of practical approach to all of it. And some of that stuff just seems so esoteric to me. And it's like knowledge for knowledge's sake. And I know that's false, but that's sort of where I got hung up. And so I said, this was my worst question. And so I was prepared to spend a lot of time talking about that. And the way Chris handled it was to say, you know, you didn't do a very good job answering my question, but let's talk about something else. And I was like, what? I had prepared for this, and he wanted to talk about something else. And then he asked me a question about feedback, and I was like, no, what do you? And just by name, you know, he said, well, what would so and so and so and so say about this? And I went, wow, oh. And so I pulled out my green book because I had it, and I looked, and it was like, oh, crap. Yeah. And so then, you know, wanting you to do well, then Dr. Guy's like, well, like, what are some cases where this kind of thing happens? And so she was feeding me. So that was, and then, you know, I would, yes, you're right. And so I still felt like kind of an idiot when that was over. But the good news is that despite that, you know, the outcome was fine. Here I am.
Yeah. We forgot to say, read your responses before you go in. That seems obvious. Definitely. If they know your response better than you, make sure to read your response.
Did the feedback, does their feedback at all in your cases match up with what they then asked you?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Only in Tanya's case. Tanya is
None
the
of them
most
cared.
linear and I think systematic of all of them.
Mine was like, yeah, like my questions are like expected, like all the questions that I got from, you know, their feedback. So yeah.
They're switching up.
They
They're
started
gonna
asking me about my dissertation.
Well, they will ask you about your dissertation. They will ask, that is standard, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I
They
can't
said, like,
remember. So the way it goes is you walk in, and Chris, as the program director, says a few words about the whole thing and how it's going to go. And then they just went around the room. And it was Guy, Ronquillo, me, Tanya, Chris. And they just go around and say, and have their turn with you. Like, ask some questions, talk about some stuff. And it's not like they have this equivalent amount of time or whatever. It's just if they have something they're curious about, they ask. And then they say, okay, you have to leave for a minute. And you go stand in the hallway. And I think Chris said, just go out in the hallway. Don't like listen at the door or anything, but go somewhere and wait. And so you kind of stand down the hall a little bit, watching the door, call back in and give you the verdict. And you know, again, Chris give a little poke about not doing a good job on his questions. Well, you could have done better, but you know, we passed you anyway, which was a little disarming. And then he said, and this is a good thing. Like, you should celebrate. It's good. You're moving on. Next thing, it's good. So it's like it all happens in the space of an hour where you do this, you talk it out, you go away, you come back in, you get the answer, and then you walk
like 30 minutes.
Is within an hour?
Yeah. But you forgot the dissertation part. That fits in before.
And that's what I was going to say. I couldn't remember if it's before you leave or when you come back.
Yeah, it's before.
Because I think they didn't ask me till after I came back.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I remember, yeah, that was the case to me too.
I don't remember that. In any event, be prepared
But
to
they may have
answer the
changed
question.
it.
What was
Do you have any tips for the oral?
Tips for the oral. I mean, like, relatively, you just spend like most of the time on the part of your essays. So mine was, you know, Dr. Guy had a lot of comments, and I had to prepare a lot. So like that actually naturally led me to talk a lot about my PA essay. So like for the rest of them, like for the rest of people, like they didn't have a lot of, you know, comments anyway. So like, you know, I just like full like really fast, but then so like you naturally see like what's the weakest part of your essay based on the feedback, and you will prepare. Yeah, anyways, like that will feel like that. And then for the I think yeah. But then I just want to add one more thing about the reflection paper that I got advice from you, Juniper, because I asked you like, what if I don't know who's gonna be my advisors?
Right,
And then
you have
there
to
could
name your
be
committee.
yeah,
You have to.
advisor community members
Yeah.
or chair, whatever.
Yeah.
Like they would ask you like who you want to work with for the dissertation. So
Don't overthink it.
yeah, right. That was great advice. Just put like names and like even like without asking those professors, you're gonna put their names in because that doesn't matter. Like you just put the names and just whatever research questions that you're thinking because that's gonna change like over time. Like so yeah, don't worry about don't stress about the dissertation part of the reflection paper. That was great advice.
Yeah, and that was such a minimal part of my conversation.
Yeah.
That's
all
a
they
big
asked me
part of
about.
mine. It was a big part of mine. How about you?
That's all they asked me about.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, and then they said, well, why don't you apply this theory? And then they started testing me through my dissertation idea.
Yeah.
It came out of nowhere. It was
Yeah, they
completely random.
grilled me on my they grilled me on that. But the committee part, I agree.
So I'd like to open it up for questions from anyone who has questions about the process.
I guess one stage of it that I'm really interested in is like when you first. I mean, you guys have kind of touched on all of it, but I'm just wondering if you have any more specific. Like, I'm a very A-type human being, so I would love to know like exactly what you guys did. Like, you read the questions, like you go on a walk or whatever. But it sounds like you guys just like went with your argument rather than with the literature. But like obviously, like you will have studied, and so that literature will be like part of your argument. So, did you? Like to me, I would think that I would probably write down like the first like 10 articles, 10 names or whatever that like come into my mind related to that and then formulate it. But you guys did it differently. Can you like elaborate just like a teeny tiny
Like
bit?
I wrote something that I knew I could support, and then looked for the support. So it was, this is something I can say that I think is supported by the literature. Now I go out, I hit Google Scholar, and I start looking for sources to support what I was going to say. And if I found something that provided some sort of counterpoint or took me a different direction, I would incorporate it. But I like almost could have just sat down and written the paper and then gone back to incorporate the literature.
I mean, I think the inductive approach, which is kind of what you're talking about, is just harder because those 10 sources you think of are going to be coming at it all from their different way, and so you're going to be swayed by what they're saying instead of generating your own. And I would say my weakest one was one where I just didn't have a real coherent argument, and instead I gave more of an overview. And they're really not looking for that. They want to know that you know the subject matter, but they're, this is kind of you transitioning from a knowledge consumer to the knowledge producer concept. And so I think they want to know that you as a scholar stand
For something.
Yeah. Even if you don't agree by the time you're done writing it. With
Well,
yourself.
and that you can make an argument.
Yeah.
Not even that you necessarily believe in it,
Yeah, I meant that.
but it's can you, and part of the orals is this, can you go in and speak about it? Because that's part of what your job as an academic is to go and present arguments and talk about arguments and respond to questions about your arguments. And so they want to know that you're going to go out into the world of scholarship and not make them look bad.
I have to say that when I did for this, my forest grade came in because I got too narrow. It was the topic I knew the best. I was, I felt very confident, and I just like, I can't handle all of this. So I got really narrow. So just stay big. And if you form that argument in advance, you can stay big. But if not, you'll get into this.
I think it's also good a little bit to know your audience. Like you've had these professors, you can know how to write to them maybe a little bit differently. Some care more about the mechanics and the fluidity with which you communicate, whereas others are more sort of dialed into precision of language and like, you know, turn the voice component up or down in accordance with who you're going to be writing to if you can.
So voice higher for guy and monkey, yeah. just checking.
In my reflection paper, when I had read through one of mine, I was writing about guerrilla government.
Oops.
And I wrote gorilla in my paper, and I was mortified, you know, about it. They didn't even notice.
That is one of my favorite stories also about comics. Juniper's so smart, and she messed up gorillas. That's what we're looking
By 11
In
p.m.
the
they were all
bonobo
gorillas.
Cross the river with a chimpanzee.
Oh my god.
You just like violated like that whole
Yeah. It was her book.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was her.
Anyway.
Any other questions?
No, I was kind of
Oh,
also
yeah, go ahead.
asking, you know, your question, like, you know, realistically, like, you know, when it comes like the exam week, based on your practice, you already, you know, built up your own arguments anyways. And then, you know, you're already having the practice and talking about your arguments, at least to yourself. So, yeah, you will like, and I also practice like, you know, just come up with like ideas as fast as I could because, you know, like it's a time constraint, time practice was just so important. So, and then like, that way, like, I know this, like, just be confident about your, you know, your opinions or your understanding of the field. So you just, you know, write it down and then, cause like, I just, you know, believe in my argument, whatever. I mean, that's, I think you have to like, you know, kind of wear like, I am the best. You know, I know this field, you know, the best. When you're, you know, actually taking the exams, like, don't, you know, take back your arguments or whatever. Just like, you know, be confident about like how you understand the field and just, you know, like, just be really quick. But yeah, you will be ready for the, you know, for the exam by the time. Definitely.
That's such faith in me.
No, it's true. It's really true. Like, I remember, like, you know, when I was in, you know, in your shoes, like, you know, you clearly told us, like, you guys probably, you know, are already ready to take the exam even before the summer. You know what I mean? Like, I was like,
Right, it was in this little session, I remember too. You guys
Yeah.
would- you'd all pass right.
yeah, you're,
I was
and
like,
like,
oh,
how do
that
you
took a
know?
lot of pressure off.
But it's really true. I realized, you know, at the end of, you know, the exam, I was like, she was right. Like, you're ready. Like, you're already having all the references from the syllabi, and then you know, they are already organized by themes from the syllabi, and then you already know how to pull the information.
It's open book. I mean, like I said before, if we were all taking an exam with multiple choice about the history and development of the field, would I pass? I'm not sure. But writing 4 essays, fine. You can all do that too. It's different.
It's just a time practice and just get your ideas.
Time. It's time.
It's time.
Yeah.
Time management.
Yeah, and in some ways it's unfair in that sense. It's testing an aspect of a person's personality more than what you know.
Alan?
Did you all have, was it the same amount of time for each of you?
They had less time, and we had more pages.
No, we had the same amount. It's just that they wanted to make sure they got 6 hours of sleep.
Oh yeah.
So they shut it down between midnight and 6, whereas we had midnight to midnight, and some people slept like 1 hour.
Yeah.
Oh,
And the thing has evolved too, because, you know, before you guys, it was all the questions at once.
Yeah,
For 5
and they
days.
just had 5 days. Yeah, which is so different. I mean, what a different exercise.
Yeah, and they said that they were getting, that they stopped doing that because the quality, you know, they would turn in these like one awesome paper and then by the time the last one came out, it was garbage. So this is to require parsing of your attention.
You know, I think proofreading though, if you can give yourself time, like G had said, stop at 9 or 10 and then give it one proofread because you never know what you've missed in there. But I had, I think 1 or 2 I worked right up till 11:45 on, which was horrible.
And also don't sweat the editing stuff. I went back before the orals and read, there were things where I wrote sentences that I didn't even know what they meant. Like, what? How is that?
Yep.
And nobody cared because
You're
it's
so
not
brain dead.
It's delirium, yeah, at the end.
Well, I think they look at your conclusion and your introduction most closely because they're not reading every word.
I also think we didn't mention this, but I think that you take the weekend off before your written exam.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Like off. Nothing. Just let your brain, there's nothing you're going to learn in those last 48 hours that's going to make or break this exam. but you could burn yourself out,
That's right.
which is a bigger risk.
You know,
Time and
I also emptied my house. Like my wife and kids and dog were not there. And that was so good because they were back for Friday. And especially by Friday, I was cooked. I was not a happy and pleasant person. Like the whole experience was just wearing me down. And so it was so easy to be distracted. Like I'm outside working on the patio and I think, well, I think I heard a noise inside. I'm gonna go see what's going on. And so I think, you know, minimum of distractibility, whatever that looks like for you is probably good, especially in the last couple of days.
Yeah, it's not a pleasant process. It
So
really
it's about time and health. It's really great.
Yeah.
Oh my God. So time and health. Just you know, like get some regular exercise when you're preparing for the exam, and also make sure you get a really great break between the written exam and the oral exam.
Don't start or stop smoking. Don't start or stop drinking coffee.
I didn't do any of them, so I was good. I was in a shape.
Did any of you write it anywhere other than at home?
I wrote it here.
But you had like your own office at the time.
Well, it's the opposite.
Well, I was there, but you were very focused. I was there.
Yeah.
I was very focused.
I had noise canceling headphones.
Yeah, he didn't even see me, so that was fine. And
Well, don't let them scare you. When you have the official prep session, I think Chris likes people to feel worried about it. Maybe he thinks it incentivizes your behavior, but for me, I don't respond to that very well, and I just think this is something not to be afraid of.
Yeah.
Use it to learn more and integrate things that you missed, and gain ideas about what interests you for research, and just get through it.
And don't be totally honest in your reflection.
Yeah.
Like I said this was a demoralizing experience. And I like you were trouble with that.
Really.
Yeah. I mean, it's not supposed to be, right? It's a.
So you're a pedagogy expert. I mean, you know.
And I could not figure out what the value in this process was. It tormented me to no end. It just was completely stupid. It has no real practical application. And I kept trying to justify the quick response thing that you're going to want to be able to do. You go to a conference and that kind of stuff. But I was like, don't spend time getting negative about it like I did. It's not really productive. Just recognize this is a hoop you have to jump through and try to come away with something good from it. Like now, a year later, I'm starting to go, okay, I know that some of that was good. Like I feel okay that I went through that. And it's not impossible. It's not horrible. Like 2% to us, you're ready and you're fine, and it'll all be okay. And Chris has probably even dialed it down a little for ours than he did for yours because he wasn't trying to be too scary. They just want you to be. They want you to be able to respond to some level of rigor in terms of the stuff you've spent the last 2 years with.
I mean, it would be a waste of time, except that in the end you get a PhD at it, you know? So,
Or at least you get qualified.
Yeah.
The next stage.
You have to do it to get the PhD.
And be prepared for kind of some oddball questions. I just remembered I got was the give the elevator speech of your research question, and I also got the if you ran into such and such scholar at a conference, what would you say to them?
Right. I got the elevator speech question too. I completely forget about it.
And it's so funny because the elevator speech is supposed to be something that you have just in your back pocket, and I was not prepared for
Me neither. So I was like, yeah, I wasn't ready for that.
Any questions from people online?
No, so what happens if I don't wish this for anyone, but what happens if you don't pass?
You get another shot.
Yeah, try again.
Oh, only year or something?
Yep.
Right.
Okay.
You get one more shot and then.
Yeah.
And I think they've not passed, I don't know, 2 or 3 people, maybe 4 people in the last 3 years. And it's all for a different variety of reasons, but incomplete responses is one reason, right? Do you know others, Nuri, why people didn't pass?
I mean, a lot of it comes in, which is why I wanted to specifically talk about the oral exam. So a couple of people did, SOA said, lose out in the oral exam. They had basically passing written exam, and they didn't go in and perform in the oral exam.
Because they just froze up and didn't answer any question? Or?
They froze up, or it appeared like they hadn't really thought about their answers.
And also dealing with anxiety, that's another issue too for the oral exam and the written exam. I feel like as long as you write something, then you will pass because you know what you're gonna say. And then as Eric said last year, like leave some space for the committee to ask. And and then to talk about yourself in the reflection page. Like I do perfect, so I have nothing to talk about.
It's pass fail. If you pass your classes, you should be able to pass this, as long as you remember that.
And I feel like this the design of the exam it makes it really hard to fail people because there are 2 people who grade.
Yep.
So that will you're getting average. So no one has entire power to fail you or something. And then you get the reflection statement in the oral exam. It's really I think on the other side of the exam. It's really hard to fail in the exam. That's how I figured. It's much harder to fail than yeah, right.
Well, and I would say, expect the idea of all the reading that I did. The advanced part of that was knowing that I know that I can sit down and I can go and I can find resources and I can incorporate them into a written paper. I don't have to know anything going in. I can go and find it, but if I'm sitting there having a conversation, I'm not sitting there with the computer open and going into Google Scholar and asking 8 questions. So I just knew it was important to me to refamiliarize myself with that so that I would have a fighting chance at answering questions that they were going to ask within. And then, I mean, these are people who, you got big deals in the field sitting there in the room with you, and they know what they're talking about, and they can pull stuff and you don't know where it's going to come from. So just having some time getting familiar with it again, and it just made me feel more.
Yeah.
It made me feel more like a PhD student again, rather than somebody who had started just paying attention to this one little thing that had only sometimes tangential connection to a lot of them. So I was going to come back to that during the morals.
Right.
I mean, at this moment, I found the Prelim process it was really painful, but then at the same time, I found it useful at this moment when it comes to organizing a lot of information. I never had to deal with that much information at once before I actually got into the Prelim process. So at the stage of writing a dissertation, I feel like that was quite useful process for me to be able to actually organize and pull out the information and how to just deal with this huge amount of information out there. So
I didn't find it useful.
I was trying to be positive, Nuri.
But it was. I mean, I talked to a lot of people who graduated and got their PhD or now doctorate, whatever, and almost all of them who got out of this program have agreed that the prelim exam is the most stressful part of the process. So once you're through this, it's all downhill. So just get through it, and it's all less stressful for her. Maybe not easy, but less stressful.
Not easier, but less stressful.
And it's only stressful because it's condensed. You're not being asked to do anything you haven't already done. You're just being asked to do it in a shorter period of time.
Yeah. And with a little less, thinking, which is what we like doing.
Right.
Yeah.
Did we go over? What time was this supposed to end?
4.
Thank you very much. The handouts are very nice.
Gina, do you have an extra one of these? So Sarah wants one.
Oh, I can email.
Well, that seems easy.
Yeah,
Yeah, would you mind doing that?
smart, Emily.
What?
Lead smart.
Email.
Peter, you know, if Mary is probably not gonna be on the committee this year. You know?
Mary?
Guys, thank you very much for your time.
Mary's
It's been very helpful listening to you. Yeah. Bye. So June.
I'm pretty sure Mary. I'm not sure that's right.
Oh, okay.
Nuriel, did you record this? I think so.
Yes, it's recorded.
Yeah, so maybe you can share, yes.
Yeah, I'll be sending this out in any resources that the presenters want to give me.
Say again?
I will send this out with any of the resources that the presenters want to give me.
Okay.
All that.
Thank you.
Yeah, I will email you the
Yeah.
handout, then yeah. Like email all of you guys like with the free version of it.